Woohoo!
Woohoo.
Jason Justice, once again, guy that knows things, kinda. Here for the Denver Green Party. We've been doing the live stream every couple of weeks and talking about local politics. And today we're going to talk about national, international politics. And I am absolutely thrilled down to the core of my socialist bones that we have the Honorable Ahmed Eltouny. He is a national co-chair of the Green Party of the United States. He has been part of he was a delegate to the Federation for the Green Party from the Global South, also global Green delegate. He was also an observer for the Venezuelan elections in 2021. This cat has chops, which we love, and I'm so glad to have you on, Ahmed. Welcome to the live stream.
Thank you so much, Jason. It's a pleasure to be here.
Right on. So the thing that got me all excited and that I was able to connect with you over is that the Green Party has officially withdrawn from the Federation. I'm going to pronounce it correctly if it kills me. Yeah, the let me scrolling up to the top. Sorry, I'm I pretty
Federación de los Partidos Verdes de las Américas. There you go.
Listen, thanks, man. Because I'm so pathetic, I have played Spanish language masses. I played for years and years and years and years, and still because of the way we are raised in this country, the only thing I can do in Spanish is order food and say the Hail Marys. So that's about it. Anyway,
You got to
so
start somewhere, brother.
I know, man. Everybody, I go into carnicerias here in Denver, and I'll be like, "Dos libres de carnitas, por favor," and they're like, "Oh, thanks for trying, man. Thanks for trying."
Paid
Anyway,
for effort, right? Yeah.
so this is a big thing. I remember back to 2016 to our national convention, and a representative from the Green Party of Mexico came up, and um, I remember that the Colorado delegation was in the front row in the center, and we stood up with our backs to him, and it really upset him. And I
Hmm?
think it's just continued to upset the Greens in the global South. Tell us a little bit about what the reason why we have withdrawn officially as a member of that group.
Well, I think it's really interesting that you start off with that story. Just because I mean I don't need to tell you, obviously from Colorado, the Mexican Greens were part of the government at the time where the students had disappeared. And I mean, I think the worst thing is that they said that the students had disappeared, and that tied into the whole los desaparecidos from the dictatorship down in Argentina back in
Right.
the late 70s, early 80s. And so, that's kind of how the Mexican Green Party has been. They've been very opportunistic in terms of just going with the flow with the government, and not really caring too much about what our pillars are in terms of being green. And the Mexican Green Party has bought in a very big amount of some of the other parties that are part of FPVA, the Federation of the Green Parties of the Americas. And so they get a lot of respect there. And a lot of the things that they want done ends up getting done because they can lobby the votes pretty easily. And this is the kind of party that we're dealing with, the ones that are, part of a government like this, the ones that, rather than ask, why are you guys, turning your backs to us because of something like this that happened. We had no control over it. For example, that's the executive side of things, and they could have like done a number of things to hear you out because it was a pretty big deal, like what happened with those students. But instead, what they did was they decided to censor us. They decided to censor GPUS. Why? Because you turned your backs towards a Mexican delegate when he came to the U.S. for your convention. So I mean, to me, I think that is a microcosm of what the main difference is between ourselves here at GPUS and what we see with a lot of parties in FPVA is that, we have these principles that come above anything else for us. Whereas I've gotten the impression that there are a lot of parties in FPVA who just want a seat at the table. They just want to make it, and green just happens to be the vehicle to push them there. And we're seeing that with the Mexican Greens, with a lot of the ways that they vote. They recently voted in support of destroying a jungle, the Mayan jungle down in Mexico. I actually don't really know the details of it. I believe it was a filibuster. They walked out of an important vote that they could have decided to. They could have been the deciding factor to preserve an ancient Mayan jungle, and they didn't. And this comes into the whole idea of, there are a number of parties in the global green structure that are primarily ecological in nature, who don't really pay that much attention to the other pillars that we have: social justice, nonviolence, grassroots democracy.
Right.
But so the question here is kind of like, if you're not even ecological, where where exactly are we meeting you? Like, yeah, sure, meet people where they're at, but where exactly are we meeting you here if we can't even start with ecology? So,
Right.
so that's kind of the background of where we've been at with FPVA and the type of folks that are there. But the turning point for us was, we decided to join the Sao Paulo Forum, which really irritated not necessarily Mexico, but it really irritated the delegation from Venezuela, which is anti-Maduro, anti-Chavez.
Right.
And the delegation from Bolivia as well, which was pro-coup against Evo Morales. And so, since Mexico relies heavily on Venezuela to be its ally in terms of FPVA proceedings and that sort of thing, they kind of took the lead in trying to force our hand. And they drafted a rule that said you can't be a part of any other international organization and continue to be a part of FPVA. And for years, we've kind of told them, listen, you need to get rid of this rule because we're not changing our minds. Like, we find this, number one, like, we're not going to take this as a, I'm personally not going to be immature about this and say, oh, you can't blackmail me, damn it. Like, this is politics. We got to think with the straight head. And from a political perspective, we're not winning the struggle on our own. Right, we're not winning the struggle. 11 parties meeting once a year in in the Dominican Republic, in Argentina, in Lima, all these other places we've gone to meet with FPVA. We're 11 parties, right?
Right.
If we want to save people and planet, we need to expand beyond 11 parties. And so,
Right.
even if you're going to be ecological and only ecological, you need to realize that we have natural allies on the left, right? I mean, you don't have to be a full-out socialist like you and I, Jason, right?
Right.
But the reality is, if I only care about the planet, if I only care about trees and water and all that stuff, right, I have a hell of a lot easier time convincing somebody who can't turn trees and water into money to be on my side, right? There's no profit motivation there. You're just saying, hey, man, we got to save the planet or we're all going to die. That's motivation enough. But once you start saying, hey, I'm not going to die, my kids are going to die, I'm going to be rich, then you have some work to do, right?
Right.
So for us, we saw that this was a very exclusionary and limiting rule within FPVA that shoots their own selves in the foot. Like, they wanted to intentionally stay small so that they can have power in their own structure. And so ultimately, this led to them lowering us to observer status in an unfair vote that our delegates wrote back that was not exactly democratic. And so our delegates suggested, hey, let's leave now. We don't have to wait to get accepted into the Sao Paulo Forum. If they're lowering our status to observers because of whatever reasons, it's time for us to walk out. So the international committee made a proposal. It passed with a 2/3 majority. Took it to the national committee. That passed, I think, 60% to 40%, something like that. So pretty handsomely passed as well. So I mean, I think the Green Party made a definitive statement that that we are more than just tree huggers, which is kind of a reputation that some people might think of the Greens.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that besides the Ayotzinapa thing, also the Mexican Greens voting to privatize Pemex, the national gas company or fossil fuel company. Now I see that AMLO has clawed that back, and also and the Mexican Greens went with him on it. It's like which way is the wind blowing?
Mhm.
You know, I I don't require much from people, just a little discipline, political discipline, right?
Political
And
consistency. Yeah,
especially when you know that you're right, especially when there are certain things, disappearing students, leftist students, obviously they don't care about. And so, I remember from 2016 just how just kind of scratch your head, kind of what because the disappearance of the Ayotzinapa students was so fresh in everyone's minds, and how this person could just come and do that. So um, I say that probably I had also noticed that part of the Federation, the Dominican group, I believe, is for a border wall with Haiti, and
yeah.
I'm like, what is?
Yeah, no, that was. I mean, this was one of like the most awkward situations I had been in at FPVA. I believe it was 2019. The meeting was taking place in the Dominican Republic in Santo Domingo, and we were welcoming Haiti as a new member. And we went to hear the Dominican Republic's presidential candidate speak. And I remember they wouldn't let Haiti in. And I was like, why? And they're like, oh, because they're still observers. This is a closed session. And then we walk in and we hear this guy. His name was Perfilio Lopez. We hear this guy's this guy's campaigning, and he wants to build a wall between Haiti and the Dominican Republic. And we walked out. Some of our comrades in FPVA, like we have some really awesome left wingers in FPVA, like from
Right,
Brazil, Argentina. And the Brazilian delegate walked out and told me, "Oh my God, my bleeding red heart right now. Like, what did I just hear? Like,
right,
how am I in the same room and same group with these folks?" So the reality is, I mean, in terms of us being demoted to observer, it's because we had organized well. We had worked things out with Brazil, Argentina, and some other left wing countries in FPVA, and we were ready to take over the executive committee in a vote that was taking place. And they knew it. Mexico, Venezuela, all of them, they knew it. And so they said, we gotta chop one off because they got a majority right now. And they used the Sao Paulo Forum as an excuse to demote us. They had their election. The same right wingers won again for executive committee. And now they want us back, but it's too late. It's yeah, you guys won your election, but you made it clear, and we're going our separate ways, and we don't want to abandon working with green parties in this hemisphere, because there are a lot of good ones.
right.
But we want to work under a democratic organization that has principles that need to be followed. One of which is you can't build racist walls between you and other countries. I don't think that's a lot to demand of parties that we want to work with, right? Some of our delegates also felt that some other parties weren't good enough with LGBTQ rights. A number of issues like that. For me personally, you mentioned that I went to Venezuela. For me personally, you can't support Juan Guaido and be a part of a federation that I'm gonna be thrilled about, just because even in Venezuela, the opposition down there itself doesn't even support Juan Guaido. That's just like really extreme folks from the U.S. and folks that are buying U.S. Propaganda that kind of believe that are at that level of the wrong side. So yeah. So I mean, we are looking forward to continue working with some of the parties in FPVA, but just as long as it's outside of FPVA and
Yeah.
within a democratic structure. So
Does the FPVA have, or do they have ties with the Organization of American States?
not that
With
I'm
the
aware of. No.
Okay, all right.
No.
I, and this brings me to the Sao Paulo Forum, and the Sao Paulo Forum, from what I understand, is a direct reaction to the OAS and how the Organization of American States keeps out Cuba, Venezuela, Bolivia, Nicaragua, and now it looks like Colombia might swing with the pink tide on June the 18th.
Yep.
Which would be beautiful. And but how long till then? That they decide they're going to ban. I think doesn't Argentina have a new leftist leaning government? Chile for sure has a leftist leaning government now.
Yep.
So how long till they push those countries out as well? So the Sao Paulo Forum obviously, I believe a few years ago, there was something placed on the floor of the National Committee for the Green Party US about supporting us trying to become part of the Sao Paulo Forum. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, that was in 2019.
Okay.
We passed that proposal to join the Sao Paulo Forum. So.
Right. Yay.
And that one passed. That one passed with I think it was like 93-1 or something. There was one person that voted no. So
wow. I'm not going to say who I think it was. Anyway, I mean, in politics, and especially in the Green Party, we've had such a one of the things I think that people on the left will point their fingers at us. I've always thought that we should be the electoral arm of the left in this country, and I think that with Howie's nomination and being also nominated by SPUSA, by Socialist Party USA, there's that was a very positive thing, and especially that it was a 100-year anniversary of when Eugene Debs ran for president on the Socialist Party USA ticket. So I think that kind of united front is great. I know that we have comrades who are anarchists that don't believe in this, or they might hold a harder line, a communist party or whatever. But I think that what our philosophy and especially in Colorado has been that we should be the electoral arm, as hard as that is, and it's very hard to attract people on the left to the Green Party. It has been because we've been looked at as being really concerned about the environment, and then sometimes Greens will talk about zero population growth or closing the borders and that kind of stuff, and that's not really who we are as an organization anymore. What are your thoughts about that?
No, I mean, yeah, I agree completely that we are heading in. I don't even want to say we're heading. I think we've been there for about maybe 6 or 7 years now. Ever since we officially became a socialist party by
Right.
a socialist plank. I believe that was in 2016.
Right.
We've been there. But I think now the word is spreading out. It's great that Howie was able to at least in part unite the left, because that is our biggest problem in the left, really. It's these divisions that we cause. I'm in New Jersey. Here in New Jersey we have 16 socialist parties. They split up over, hey, you know what? I don't think Trotsky should have done this, 50 years ago, 150 years ago. Like, it's over stuff like this where it's kind of like, hey, that's in the past. Like, they're still discussing 1956 Budapest and whatever. It's kind of like, hey, we're right now in the here and now. That's no reason to like split over stuff. So I always love it when I see us, unite across tickets and stuff like that. And marginal tiny differences that we have should not affect what we're trying to build, especially when we're starting at such a low point. When we're trying to get 5%, and that's where we're starting, then yeah, you know what, unite the left, get to that 5%, and we can't start talking about tiny marginal differences or whatever until we get to a level where we can actually defeat the system that's present right now as an electoral arm, right? Because at the end of the day, any kind of differences that I have with anybody from any of the other socialist parties that exist, each and every one of them is better than the Republicans or the Democrats. I've never voted for either of them at any level in my life, right? So these differences should not be dividing us if we have the mission in front of us. And I was actually it really sucks because I had the right idea, but I was disturbed a lot by a lot of folks who were questioning the loyalty to either side from Howie because he was merging them together. And with that kind of attitude, we're gonna fail. We need to have an attitude of growth and not be like FPVA and limit us. You must stay within the Greens and not expand to the Socialists or whatever. I mean, it's funny that you mentioned this because maybe you did this on purpose, but to me it's the exact same situation, right? And and to your point about the Sao Paulo Forum being a response to the Organization of American States, I mean, that's exactly what it was, right? And it was started by Lula. And yeah, we do see this pink tide spreading. What started off with Cuba, ages ago, right? But in recent times, what started off with Hugo Chavez, yeah, it's spread to maybe not presently, but it spread to Rafael Correa in Ecuador, even Mujica down in Uruguay, who's not there anymore. The Kirchners were in Argentina for a while, and now we have another leftist president down there. Peru's left-ish right now, and then the big news that's coming out, which I cannot even believe, is what's happening in Colombia right now. Just because historically, Colombia is kind of like the Israel of Latin America, right?
Right.
It's since in 1948 they had this guy named Jorge Eliezer Gaitan get assassinated. He was the Minister of Labor, I believe, and he got shot on the streets of Bogota. And since then, there has not been a leftist leader. This is 1948. There has not been a leftist leader with any serious shot of gaining control there. And there's been, the guerrillas and the civil war taking place and the narcos who come in. And then, you get people who are more hardline on the right to try to suppress the narcos and all that. So it's just been really, really bad in Colombia. And in a lot of places, they don't even teach the history of Colombia in Colombia because they say it's too sad and they don't want to upset people, right? So they just kind of forget history as a lesson in schooling. And that makes it really difficult to overcome the oppression that's taking place there, right? Because if you don't even understand, what's happening, how we got here, the first thing that you want to do if you want to keep people down is take away their education, right? So I got very excited when the National Paro started last year. I believe it was April 28th of 2021. And yeah, and they took to the streets, and I was like, yeah, all right, awesome, Colombia's gonna join the pink tide and whatever. And basically what we were waiting to see is if these protests that, they started off against the value added tax. And they basically felt that this was a tax on the middle class, but we got to be careful with this terminology. Like we like to say working class against the bourgeoisie, right? But they felt that this was a tax on them. The working class felt it was a tax on them, and they should be taxing the super rich and the politicians and all of that. And that's a leftist principle in and of itself. But it still remained to be seen if this would extend to the ballot box, if they would understand, if the general populace would understand that what you're asking for is more leftism right now. And all we ever see are right-wing presidents coming in. So will we see change coming in, right? And we end up with Gustavo Petro, who, beggars can't be choosers, right? But, Gustavo Petro by no means is a Fidel Castro, is by no means a Hugo Chavez, he's more of a Bernie Sanders. And if anything, his primary thing that he's campaigning on is greenish, right? It is, sustainable energy and that sort of thing, moving away from fossil fuels. So he is primarily like in that element, right? But at the same time, by Colombian standards that have always been super conservative, this guy is super scary. This guy may as well be like a Fidel Castro to them, or whatever, right? So, it was very interesting to see if like those national protests that swept the entire country, right? Like everyone was out on the street. It was interesting to see, like, all right, so everybody has a problem with the government. Do we know if you guys are gonna, in the ballot box now vote for someone different? Or are you just gonna buy into the same old lies that we always hear? Or worse yet, what happened here in the U.S., where we were sick of the system and the people went out and voted for Donald Trump, who's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he was outside of the system, but on the wrong side of outside, right? They're saying we don't want anyone who takes the bribes, and you end up electing someone who gives the bribes, right? So I mean, doesn't make any sense here. So that's kind of what we wanted to wait and see, and then with the elections taking place on Sunday, it actually ended up basically being what we thought the parallel would be, which is two candidates coming out who represent anti-corruption and being outside of the system and whatever. It is good news to see Petro coming out on top. Yeah, he finished with 40%.
40, right?
Yeah, compared to Hernandez, who finished with 28%, and then I think Gutierrez finished with 20%. So Petro is definitely on top, but I'd hate to. I don't want to be the Johnny Raincloud or whatever, but looking at numbers like that, right, in the runoff, because Petro didn't get the 50%, I think it's going to be difficult for him to get over 50% in the second round.
I agree. I posted an article from New York Times saying that, their Trump is really going to pull from behind, which is always, when I see something in the New York Times and it's propaganda in this direction, I know that things are not going to be great. It's amazing to me that how anti pink tide all of the U.S. media is, and but obviously our government and the shenanigans that our government plays in everyone's electoral process is, our thumb is heavily on the scale for the fascists down there. And I mean, they're just fascists. I think about Guaido and what a joke he is, but it's scary that our government just. I think that the United States government can't run fast enough to back right wing or fascist governments around the world, and in the global South, we were talking about this before, and my father-in-law and my mother-in-law being political refugees from Guatemala after the coup. It's a real thing. 1 million Guatemalans are dead now from the genocide that's been committed down there. And then obviously in Colombia, the whether it's narco violence or state violence, I mean, it's all the same. There's a genocide going on in the global South that's been going on for 100 years that we don't really know about here in the States. So I guess my point here is, other than to get on my soapbox, is we've got to put an end to this kind of stuff. I think that I think it would be good for us, for the Green Party of the United States, to be recognized by the Sao Paulo Forum, because it would send a message to leftists in this country that it's not just a brocialist thing right up here. That there's actually some people with committed ideology. That I think that we are obviously very splintered and very sectarian here, but that could be a lightning rod, hopefully. my message to people that are looking at the Green Party, the leftists that are looking at the Green Party, and they see sometimes some idiosyncratic outliers that like to align themselves with us, that my response to that is, well, if you can't beat idiosyncratic outliers, when the real thing comes, what do you what are you going to be able to how are you going to be able to deal with that when the when if and it doesn't look like if it looks like when Roe v. Wade is struck down and the level of right-wing violence rises, and the Democratic Party, the liberals are not equipped to deal with that the way that we on the left are. What are you going to do then? You're going to need some place to go, and where the place to go. I'm interested in uh, the process, and for us to the Sao Paulo Forum, if there is a way that we can put our thumb on the scale for them allowing us to come in.
Yeah, so as of right now, membership is suspended in the Sao Paulo Forum. Last I checked with their executive committee,
Right.
they were supposed to be meeting sometime this summer to discuss reopening membership. And I specifically asked, is it going to be open to folks from the global north? And that's something that they want to discuss, right? Because the Sao Paulo Forum, in terms of this hemisphere, right, it is the largest organization of socialist parties that exists on this side of the world, and it seems like we're heading in the direction where a lot of these socialist parties want to start making an annual meeting of sorts to compete with all the capitalist meetings that take place all over the place, right? I mean, you have the summit taking place in San Diego. It's actually, I think it might be in 2 weeks. I think it's June 10th. And you have a competing. They intentionally left out Venezuela and Cuba, I think. So they're holding their own summit in Tijuana, right across the border from
Right.
San Diego, right? So you have this that might develop into something that happens yearly. President Maduro called for a bicentennial Congress for the peoples of the world to commemorate the Battle of Carabobo. I believe that was last summer as well.
Right.
And that was fantastic. I attended that as well, and there was comrades from 150 different countries around the world. And that's something that on the last day everyone was saying, hey, we need to make this an annual thing, not a bicentennial thing. I don't want to have to wait that long for the next one. So we are kind of countries around the world outside of Latin America. We're kind of hungry for something like this to unite us at the global level, and Latin America is taking the lead in this, right? I mean, Latin America is the one that's starting all this with the pink tide that we mentioned and all that.
Right.
And if this happens in Colombia, if Gustavo Petro wins, and again, Gustavo Petro by no means is going to be like a Hugo Chavez or anything, but he may as well be, because of the history that Colombia has, because of historically what they've been all about. Right. It would be just as effective to me as if Bernie Sanders would have won here in the U.S. Right. We're not fans of Bernie, but when you compare Bernie to a country that's historically been on the far right or whatever, it is revolutionary, and that's why a lot of people and a lot of the young folks embraced Bernie Sanders, even though he lacked the criticism of the foreign policy and the military budget that all of us kind of put as a priority. As Greens, we kind of put that as a priority above anything else, considering the U.S. military is the most egregious polluter in the world, number one, and the number two, just the nonviolence part of our platform and the racism involved with our foreign policy. Just everything is there. Everything that we stand against is there in our foreign policy. It would be revolutionary for Colombia for that reason, because of historically how the U.S. has always kind of depended on them every time we would see other countries falling like dominoes. When it would happen in Venezuela, Ecuador, Uruguay, Brazil, Argentina, it was like good old faithful Colombia is sitting right there, not going anywhere. And they cut off ties with Venezuela as well. I think you know that.
Yeah.
So for this to happen in Colombia, I think would be a wake up call that you guys have lost Latin America. You guys might be able to get your coups in there in Bolivia to get rid of, Evo Morales and whatever, but it's just going to come back. It'll come back. Countries are going to keep switching to the pink tide every time, you turn your back away. And, will the U.S. eventually give up on that? Who knows? We are pretty stubborn with how much we force capitalism upon others. But
Right.
but it would be a pretty big deal. When you lose your biggest mark down there. Colombia joined NATO as a global partner, for God's sake, like 3 years ago. Yeah, that's how far under the U.S. arm they're at. So seeing that change there, I think would be a huge deal, and might and hopefully getting all of Latin America on board in that way might get them to start thinking it's time to expand and start bringing in African countries. Southeast Asian countries, and maybe in that same spirit of comradeship, they'll start accepting us from the north. But even if they don't, I think this is the important part, Jason. Even if they don't accept membership, they have welcomed us as observers there. And the only difference between observers and full-on members, number one is the solidarity that it shows, obviously, but you don't have to be a full member to show solidarity. The other thing is you get to host workshops and speak at plenaries and whatever. And I'm of the opinion of, even if we are full members, I'm not trying to host any kind of workshop or any kind of plenary there. I'm there to listen, bro. I wanna learn how y'all did it, and I want to show you love from the north, and let you know that we're doing our job up here. We may not be doing it as quick of a rate as y'all are down there, but we want to see your liberation too. We're here to listen to y'all on what you need from us, not to explain to you why you're oppressed. We're not like that, right? Maybe the Democrats and Republicans would want to do that, but not the Greens, brother. No.
I want to send them a message saying we don't want to come down there and Columbus your shit.
Right.
That ain't us. This is not what I think it's such a beautiful thing, and this obviously makes the oligarchs who run everything or who think they run everything really nervous, and why there is such extreme anti-red propaganda in this country. When I was thinking about Margaret Flowers and Kevin Zeese when they were occupying the Venezuelan embassy at the behest of the Maduro government. When Jesse Jackson showed up there to get food to them, and the Venezuelan expats or the Venezuelan fascists started putting their hands on him.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so Jesse is a liberal, supports all of that, but keep your fucking hands off of Jesse Jackson. I don't care what my political differences with. That's Jesse Jackson. You don't put your hands on him, and of course,
and that's the level. That's the level of that's who we're dealing with here with Venezuelans, and I think it's a difficult situation for us as leftists here in the U.S. Seeing the exodus of right-wingers from these countries like Cuba and Venezuela that the U.S. then leans on to say, hey, listen to these Venezuelans. And you're like, but I've been to Venezuela, bro.
right.
Yeah, you've got 2,000 of them over here, but I've gone and I've seen how 2 million of them react, right? And and it starts first and foremost with the color of their skin, really.
Absolutely.
When you go down to Cuba and Venezuela, I'm gonna use both those as an example. You see just how much darker the people down there actually are compared to the ones that you've met in Miami, right?
Right.
And so you start thinking, okay, so wherever there's racism, there's going to be a class difference too, right? And so you start realizing the people who fled, why they were fleeing, why they were against this liberation and all that stuff, right? And it's in Venezuela, the situation is so bad that I'll tell you something. When I was down there as an observer, I spoke to members of the two parties there, COPE, and what was the other one? Acción Democracia, and those two parties For 50 years, from 1948 until 1998, which was Chavez's revolution, for 50 years, it was in their constitution that they would switch every 2 years. Like just like what we have with the Republicans and Democrats, they had an agreement, we're going to switch, right? It's going to be us. Nobody else gets to say anything. It's going to be us, right? Then Chavez came, got rid of all that. There was a revolution. It was mayhem. It was that absolute chaos. You know, Chavez is more popular than Jesus down there in Venezuela, right? Maduro, not so much, but, you know, Chavez, absolutely, right? You know,
Yeah.
Chavez is that popular, right? And so, you know, speaking to representatives from these two parties who literally had more to lose than anybody else in Venezuela. They were in charge. They were the only people who had power for 50 years, right? That's who these two parties are. And they told us we are 100% against Juan Guaido, and we're against U.S. intervention. Like, this is about national sovereignty right now. And once you start messing with our sovereignty, we all need to unite against that shit. Right? Exactly what we're talking about with leftists, you know, uniting together. They had that idea. They're like, hey, no, we're about to be taken over by the U.S. And no, you know, like, I may have my political differences with Maduro, but there is a difference between standing against your political opponents and standing against your own countrymen. Because that's what you're doing if you're supporting Guaido, U.S. sanctions, U.S. intervention, and all that stuff. And so it's very powerful to hear that from, you know, the two parties who literally lost the most from this revolution, but they at least understood that. So once you take that into consideration, you start to realize just how bad the folks here in the U.S. Are in terms of the spectrum, and just how far right wing they are in that aspect.
Right. Well, let me take us in a little bit different direction. We've been on for about 41 minutes. I want to you know, you work, and so do I, and so I want to try and keep these you know, to an hour or less, a little less than an hour at the most. But let me just put a plug in here, y'all. I put in the chat links to different things, also to the Denver Green Party website. Get involved with us. Make a one-time donation. We would love that. I haven't made the pitch as much tonight. I think that this is like truly really exciting for me to be able to bring people from the national party here to talk to you all here in Colorado about what's going on nationally, what's going on globally for us as a party. We're serious, and you know, voter suppression is a real thing for us, for any third party in this country. We have ballot access, I believe, in 20 states. Many states have unbelievably rigorous ballot access requirements. I believe that Howie's trying to get on the ballot right now in New York, and as a party gift, Cuomo raised the amount of signatures they needed to get on the ballot. I think it's like 45,000 in 90 days or something crazy. So he's, you know, it's voter suppression is real for all sorts of different groups in this country. And what I think that one of the things you can take away from the Green Party is that we try and be hyper democratic about everything that we do, and especially in Colorado, we are hyper democratic, and so this is, if you believe in democracy, if you believe in grassroots democracy, if you believe in that, if you see a different place that we could all be living, then the Green Party is for you. And so get in touch with us at Denver Greens. We'd love to talk to you. We have a state convention coming up. You have to have been a registered Green for 6 months to participate. But if you've been a registered Green all along, then we'd love to talk to you. So one of the last things I want to talk to you about, Ahmed, is Global Greens. Now, is that part of the U.S. Green Party, or is that a larger organization, international organization?
All right, so the Global Greens was something that was founded in Canberra, Australia, in 2001. And
Okay.
basically, what happened there was there was a split in how they wanted to organize the global green structure, right? I mean, it was great that we realized that, I shouldn't say we, I wasn't involved with this, but I know their history. Um, they realized, it's fantastic that we understand that all the things that we need to accomplish needs to be accomplished globally, or it means nothing happening within one country. The whole socialism within one country debate, greenism within one country, right? There was no
Right.
debate there. We knew global warming in and of itself, it's called global warming, right? So, it was great that we shared these principles, but how to manage it, there was a divide there with some people thinking that it made the most sense to divide us into federations, and each of us send representatives to like a steering committee, right? And other folks said, no, if we're going to be all about grassroots democracy, each of us should just have one vote. Each country has one vote, and we discuss everything national committee style, like what we do on in GPUS. And so as a compromise, they decided to do both, but one of them just died out, right? Just because the one vote for every country that died out. That was called the Global Greens Network, and as of right now, it's kind of defunct. Nobody really participates in that. John Rensenbrink, one of our Greens, he's been trying to revive that a little bit, but to no avail. No avail. What has happened since 2001 is the other path, which was basically splitting us into four federations. Federation of the Americas, which is FPVA, Federation of Europe, Federation of Africa, Federation of Asia. Those four federations, if you're a member of those federations, you become a member of the Global Greens. And within that federation, you hold elections for delegates to represent your federation at the steering committee. They call it the Global Greens Council, Global Greens Coordination Council. And the thing is, like, you end up representing a federation instead of your own country. And so, to me, I never understood why they wanted to do it this way, because we find ourselves in a federation that's obviously very different than we are. And, we want to vote a certain way that,
Right.
most of them. So that's kind of what the Global Greens is. Effectively, by us leaving FPVA, we're no longer members of the Global Greens.
Oh,
But at the same time, because FPVA had demoted us to observers, we had been demoted to observers of the Global Greens. What this means to us in terms of what we can accomplish. Number one, we don't have to pay dues anymore. So I mean, that's the positive.
yeah.
But in terms of the power that we would have, like I said, the steering committee of the Global Greens is made up of three representatives from our federation. And like I told you, we were demoted so they could stack that election to get their people in,
Wow.
to get those three. So we weren't going to be a part of that decision-making body anyway. What we would be allowed to do is every 5 years they hold the Global Greens Congress, where all members go and they vote in resolutions that pass, and everybody has one vote, and that we're allowed to do, or that we would have been allowed to do if we were members. We would have one vote out of 80 members who also have a vote. The only caveat there is that every federation is allowed to veto a proposal. That happened to me. Actually, I was a Global Greens delegate in 2017 in Liverpool, and I passed the first ever pro-Palestinian resolution at the Global Greens. But the word apartheid got vetoed by the German Greens. They didn't like that. They're like, no, you need to take this out or we're blocking the whole thing, right? And so, like, the idea is, you shoot for the stars, land on the moon. You have to aim high, right? So it's like, I'm calling it exactly what it is. This is an apartheid policy in there. If that's what it takes, I have to start there so that after you butcher this thing with all your carve-outs and all that, it ends up being just a condemnation of the Israeli wall and the Israeli discrimination against Palestinians. If that's where I got to start, that's where I got to start. But, we did end up getting the first pro-Palestinian resolution passed. So that's good. But in terms of what we're losing with the global Greens, it's this level of pushback that we're going to be getting while we're there. So.
Yeah, they're not. I know. I mean, I believe the defense minister in Germany is a Green, which makes no fucking sense to me.
We need someone who's really good with NATO. Who should we turn to?
Right.
Greens. That makes so much sense, right?
This is and I'm not going to go off on a NATO rant, but just suffice it to say that who hates communists more than any other group on the planet? Fascists. So if you're going to have an anti-communist bloc, what people would be the best to staff that? Ex-Nazis. So it's fascists. I mean, NATO is hugely problematic, and now, and I think that the spread of thinking about NATO and thinking about Greens wanting to be involved with it is really, and globally, it shows that maybe we're just a little bit more aware of of conditions on the ground all over the world for working class people than than a lot of these international Green parties. But you were in Liverpool, and I know that the Green Party in the UK has made some gains, but what is the general atmosphere of the Green parties in Europe?
Yeah. So in Europe, it actually varies greatly, right?
Right.
I mean, like one thing I always like to remind people of is that McCarthyism here was extremely severe, and we had a major purging of all proper leftist movements and leftist parties and socialist parties, to the point that we celebrate Labor Day on a completely different day. That I actually don't even know when Labor Day is because I'm always celebrating May Day myself.
Right.
But like we caused this huge. We tried to, and I'm saying we, but the United States tried to separate the working class of the United States with the rest of the world, right? And for that reason, we don't have that strong socialist party, and we have 16 socialist parties trying to either build from scratch or regain what they had here in New Jersey. And so what ends up happening is because the Green Party. Green Party by itself, obviously, these principles are leftist principles, and so a lot of leftists who didn't find a home to go to, because a lot of these socialist parties were butchered, came running to the Green Party, right? And that's how we got this influx of socialists, and how we easily passed, platform planks that called for workers-owned organizations, and how we easily passed proposals for joining the Sao Paulo Forum, etc. Around the world, though. That didn't happen with the socialist parties. Like a lot of these countries around the world have socialist parties, right? Yeah. So the people who join the Greens are usually people who believe in primarily their primary passion is what people think of when they think of green, which is, the planet and, all of that, right? So you have a lot of folks who are, ecological one, and then on the side, you got social justice, democracy, and all that stuff. Whereas for us, a lot of people coming in are firmly passionate about social justice first and foremost, and we kind of understand that the economic system that oppresses people is also the one that's destroying the planet, and so we target that system, right? So we kind of have that understanding here because of that history that we've gone through in the U.S. And so abroad, it just kind of depends. In Europe, it just kind of depends which country you go to, right. And most of them are going to have centrist and leftist. Right. Europe, I don't think has the straight up right wing problem that we see in FPVA. You'll end up with folks that are in the center or on the left, and the rank and file members. I've met some absolutely wonderful comrades in Green parties of the Netherlands and Sweden, in the UK, all over Europe. But the stars of the show in Europe are the German Greens because they're the most successful ones, and they are extremely pro NATO, and In their defense, I will tell you this. In their defense, I don't remember how long ago it was. Maybe it was like 15 years ago or something like that. But the German Greens, they had done their best showing in the parliamentary elections over there, and they passed a very unpopular rule that I think it was that it required no meat products to be served in lunch schools. I think that's what it was, but it was something. It was something very, very green, right? That not a lot of people like at all, right?
Right.
And that caused them a bunch of seats, right? And I think, and I'm saying this in their defense, right?
Right.
I think that caused them to realize, hey, you know what? We can't go 100% all go no quit based on principle. Otherwise, we're going to lose the power that we have. We need to like gradually bring this forward, right? So I understand that aspect, but I also think that there's certain lines that you don't cross, right? And I think war and NATO is one of those lines, right? Like, yeah, just because people don't understand how horrible NATO is, it's your job to educate them, right?
Right.
Like, you're not going to catch me supporting NATO to retain my seat because that seat means nothing if I'm causing war and destruction, right? So.
Right. Well, and it's very complex. That's such a silly, droll thing for me to say, but it's very complex. In much more complex, I think, in Europe than here because they have multiple parties and they're not the voter suppression there is not the same as it is here, and people don't really get that, and this return to Jim Crow era voter laws in this country, that's happening in 30 states in the United 30 states out of the 50 are controlled by the right wing in this country. And so, so that where does that leave us? Very the right wing is much more united. They're a much more united front than we are. And I think that this whole abortion thing, the whole Roe v. Wade thing, the people who are anti-choice don't care that they're aligning themselves with Richard Spencer and the Klan and the Nazi Party and that kind of those kind of dangerous elements that are floating around out there. So I think that I wonder if the Federation from Latin America or the European Greens really understand what kind of a pebble we're pushing up against a hurricane here.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
no, it's a fair question.
yeah, and so maybe they should have just backed the hell off. I am happy that we're not part of that federation anymore. I'm really happy about it. I think it's one of the most positive things we've done in the National Party in a long time, other than taking a stand for our transgendered
Absolutely.
comrades, and
Yeah, and
taking.
a lot of people will tell you those were the saddest moments, right? Is we don't like losing states, we don't like losing membership, etc. And while I can appreciate that, I think it shows principle greater than anything else, that we are willing to make sacrifices for what's right. And ultimately, that's what we expect from our politicians, right? Is
Right.
to understand that you have this principled stance and, you can't be wavered away from these principles just to get reelected, just to gain donations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, that's what we did with Georgia. That's what we're doing with FPVA. And I am a firm believer in addition by subtraction. That is a thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to shrink to grow. You have to sometimes take one step back to take two steps forward. And all these steps that we're taking, as difficult it may be for people to accept, and as as negative as they may seem on the surface, ultimately I do think it's going to make us a stronger party, and it's going to get us all on the same page. We're going to have that political cohesion, and so that we can focus on strategy above all else. And
Right.
that's basically the important thing that we need to focus on as organizers right now, is how to grow, how to move forward, how to get how to get ballot access across all these states with the suppression that's happening, and how to win seats. So
Right. Yeah, I think my last point, and we're gonna wrap it up here, but one of our things in Colorado for a number of years has been people deserve a safe space to organize. And if you're having to deal with, people that are still so wrapped up in their white supremacy and don't understand, it takes people like me who present like me, cisgendered heterosexual in their late 50s male, white male. It takes a lot of study, a lot of opening your heart and your mind to what's really wrong in this country. And spoiler alert, it's the white supremacist system. It's capitalism and it's white supremacy and all of that kind of shit. And I think that it's very hard. It has been hard for people that have been Greens for a long time, who see the party slipping away from them because all of these Reds are here now. Well, the Reds are here, and we're pretty well organized. Thanks to a couple of people that have come before us. I don't know where they might be. Maybe upstairs here in my house. I don't know, but yeah, and people like you on the steering committee, it's super important. I think that the steering committee has a lot of Reds on it right now. Am I correct?
yeah, for sure. I mean, I would even go out and say probably every single person on the steering committee identifies as a socialist. I've never straight up asked, but it's kind of because we've reached that level as a party where it's kind of like just known where you're at.
Right.
But at the same time, identifying as something doesn't necessarily mean you are something. There's always room for political education for all of us. The important thing is that we accept it, that we don't get defensive about it, that none of us think that, I've been around the block longer than everybody else, that I'm older than everybody, so I have nothing to learn from these wise ass 19-year-olds who probably know more than me and you, Jason,
Yeah.
right?
Oh
But,
yeah.
we need to have that humility and accept, political education, because there's always room to improve.
Right. Well, I thank you for coming on from the East Coast, to do this. I'm still, I still got a bunch of hours I can stay
Right.
up, but
Yeah.
you, I'm sure, are thinking about turning in. Is there anything you want to say to us here in Colorado from the National
I
Party
do
perspective?
actually, not necessarily to you in Colorado, but to your viewers. I do want to say support the Denver Green Party, support Colorado, one of our best states across the entire Green family. I really mean that. You guys got your shit together. You guys are very well organized. You have your political education going. You keep everything flowing. Love the state of Colorado. Get yourselves registered green down there. Attend that convention. You can't participate within the first 6 months, but if you start today, that'll give you a 6 month head start for next time. So
That's right.
get to it,
That's
yo.
right. Ahmed, comrade, thank you so much. Thanks so much. Uh, uh, I hope that we covered things that people might be interested in knowing about. I think that they are. I think that the direction that we're moving in as a party nationally is so positive, and thanks for being a part of that. Thanks for shepherding us in to this new era, as they say. So for tonight, we'll say goodbye, but next week we'll see you. And remember, a revolutionary's heart is driven by great love. So have some love. All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Peace.